Good evening, everybody. We welcome everyone to the presentation of the CEsA Thinks, or CEsA Pensa in Portuguese. We are grateful for the acceptance of this presentation by Reverend Father Dr. Samaila Bahago, who himself will be having the presentation, will be anchoring us now from the University of Veritas University Abuja, the Department of Educational Foundation and Faculty of Education. We welcome everybody online. We welcome those here present. We welcome every other person. And as we begin, we know some will be joining us. The topic for today states that the topic for the day and for the month states that the cost of juvenile substance abuse and addiction on households and communities in Nigeria. Can guidance and counseling be a panacea? We would therefore start considering the fact that we are 5 minutes behind schedule. Father Dr. Bahago, are you ready for us, sir?
Yes, I'm ready. I am. Thank you, Vincent.
Welcome, Father. The floor is yours.
Okay. So, you've already introduced me, so I will just stand on the existing protocols. But just to say something about Veritas University, Abuja. This is the only Catholic university established by the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria to promote excellence in education. So, and the title of my presentation this evening, The Cost of Juvenile Substance Abuse and Addiction on Households and Communities in Nigeria specifically. And can guidance and counseling be a panacea or be of any help to this problem of substance abuse and addiction among young people in Nigeria and the communities in which they live in? So what actually informed this research work was the quest to find out from the parents of addicts directly to have an idea if this abuse and addiction costs them any financial problems. Nigeria, like many other communities around the world, you have young people participating in all sorts of criminal behaviors. One of the major criminal behavior in most communities around the world, which Nigeria is not exempted, is that of substance abuse. It will start with substance abuse, and over time it develops into addiction. And for us in Nigeria as a community, this research has taken quite almost 2 years now. We went into this research and we discovered that substance abuse and addiction is becoming an unbearable problem. Problem not just on the youth themselves or their households, but even the community in which they find themselves. So some of these actions, the families have to pay severely. The communities are not left considering the effects of this substance abuse and addiction. But it got worse during the pandemic, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when almost all schools had to be closed down in Nigeria. So lots of young teenagers had to go back home to their communities, and those of them who are used to abusing these substances, the peer influence, they went back home, and some of their age mates who are not in school also and already abusing these substances. So it led to an influx of young people, increase in numbers. And as the numbers are increasing, the economic consequences on the parents was becoming unbearable. By the time schools reopened, and that is the post-pandemic now, post-COVID-19 pandemic, it became even more serious that some parents couldn't afford to pay school fees anymore. Some parents' businesses were affected as a result of the influx of young people and increase in numbers of substance abuse. So this has brought a lot of effects, and some of the effects of substance abuse that we discovered from our finding with parents, the very most severe one is the increase in numbers of young people abusing these substances. Some have multiple substances they're abusing, not just one. And you imagine some of these substances are very costly. They cost a lot of money to get these substances. So you have high influx of young people into this substance abuse and addiction. You have also increase in the illegal and illicit trading in the drugs themselves. One of the community I visited, it's so shocking to discover that young people, they carry these drugs, they go out to buy bread, this normal bread we eat in homes, and they slice them open and sneak in substances in there. So the parents think their children have come in with loaves of bread for breakfast, and inside you have all kinds of substances, just to find different ways of sneaking into the home with illicit substances. In the communities, the community also experienced a lot of effects, increase in crime rates, social vices. You have cultic activities increasing. You have some young teenagers attempting suicide. Those who have lost confidence, have lost track in due to the influence of these substances. You also have insecurity challenges. Some of them, they end up joining these kidnapping gangs, taking people and requesting for monies. Now that the parents cannot afford, to pay, to give them all the monies they need to abuse these drugs, they kidnap people, innocent people in the communities around, keep them in corners of the streets, and extort money from victims' relations. These are all the challenges, the consequences that communities will have to face in Nigeria presently at this post-COVID-19 pandemic. There is serious increase in kidnappings all around across communities. And most of them are these young juveniles who go into drugs. And when they take these drugs, they're intoxicated. They behave without any mercy on any fallen victims into their hands. There are also increased numbers of health problems, mental health issues. Some have to be admitted in hospitals, and the parents will have to bear the cost of paying for their medical treatments. Some have to undergo recovery treatments at many rehabilitation centers. The 5 rehabilitation centers around Abuja, where I live here, you have big numbers of teenagers who are suffering different mental issues from substance abuse and addiction. So all these serious consequences informed the decision of this research to go into findings directly with the parents to know if this substance abuse and addiction has any effects, financial effects especially, on them. The main problem is the alarming, rising increase in numbers of young people and the cost on their families and the community, which we have to bear. Even myself, my community where I live here is not safe. you have large numbers of young people. From their appearance, you need no one to tell you that these are dangerous human beings moving around. And the next slide, you see, I put up a picture of young boys and girls. They form clubs. They form hidden places where they go. You can see them. You see that young girl there with a bottle of, this is not the European champagne, you know. This is a locally made alcohol that is higher in alcohol. There's a drink in Poland, in Europe, they call it vodka. I think vodka is about 75% alcohol volume, but this, we call this in Nigeria kai kai. And this kai kai is a very strong gin drink that is over 80% alcohol volume, that if you take just a shot of it, it turns the brain. You can see that young lady there with a cigarette in her hand, and then she has a whole bottle to herself. You can also see those young boys, they're busy. So these addictions, they take serious toll on families. They take serious tolls on neighborhoods, on communities. So most young Nigerian addicts, they would go to any extent to get money, not to eat good food, but money that they would use to hook up to their substances that they are already addicted to. Now they are back to school. And the problem there now is they tell lies to their parents. They increase school fees figures that parents have to expand their budgets that they were not prepared for. And for poor parents who cannot afford this due to severe economic issues, problems we are facing in Nigeria, the option is for such students, they are either withdrawn or they drop out. They cannot afford to pay fees. Here in Nigeria, whether it is a public university or a private university, school fees are paid. The private institutions pay higher, but government institutions, students, parents also have to pay school fees. So where a student is already addicted to some of these drugs and is not being sincere to the parents, if he is used to taking a pack and he has grown into taking 2 packs, it means he has to find a way of telling the parents lies so as to collect more money to enable him fit his addiction. The most concerning one is that some of these young teenagers, they are not just addicted to one substance. Some are addicted to 2, some to 3, some to 4 substances. And the more the different substances young people abuse, the more the cost on their parents. That is the most worrisome problem of this addiction and substance and this abuse, substance abuse and addiction that parents have to face. That many of them abuse. I personally, in my interaction with some of the addicts, some abuse up to 6 different substances. And some consume these different substances in a day at different intervals. Somebody will take marijuana in the morning and he goes on after some hours to take tramadol and the next, and so on and so forth. So the more the different substances, the more the cost on parents, the more the cost on parents' businesses. Some businesses have closed up. Some parents can no longer sustain their businesses because each day it is one problem or the other, and they may have to pay money. Some of these teenagers, sometimes they break a lot of laws. They are taken into police stations. The parents will have to go for bailing and all that. That is not all. There are other addiction-related costs that parents, communities will have to bear. One of it is every young man or woman that is addicted to alcohol or to any substance at all, there is difficulty for such people to find jobs or employment. Their appearance alone at screening centers, job screening centers or employment centers betrayed their appearance. So no employer would like to see a young man or woman drained by substances and would think of giving them jobs. So this compounds the problem that their households will have to face. Their health maintenance. Some families that operate local family health insurances, they no longer afford them because the cost is far beyond the insurance premium. So some of the parents, the victims' parents, they told us they had to abandon their life policies, their health policies, because one or two of their children, the cost, the company would have to review it at a higher cost that they no longer are able to afford the policies. Again, if you have large number of young people dropping out of school, it means that the income of the family, they suffer big loss. For instance, in the Nigerian currency here, there are some private institutions that pay up to ₦1 million in a year to make sure their children acquire quality education. So if you have a young teenager who has spent 2 or 3 years in the university and is addicted to substances, and the end result is always that they lose confidence in their studies and they find any excuse they can give to abandon such studies. So the moment a student abandons that study program, it means all the millions the family have invested is a big loss. It's gone. They will never get it back from such institutions. Also, another bigger problem is many addictions result in health issues, a lot of health problems, mental health problems. Some young teenagers, you go into hospital, you see they are undergoing liver cirrhosis treatments, kidney problems, and many other health challenges like that. These are all addiction-related cost problems on households and communities. Spending time looking for and using drugs or other addiction substances, cost a lot of life experiences and knowledge that young people would have missed. Instead of a young person focusing on an entrepreneurial skill that he has been put to train on, they spend time looking for drugs and they miss better opportunities that lie ahead of them. Also, addiction sometimes, a few number of the addicts we chatted with their parents told us how some of them had accidents under influence. They were driving under influence. DUI is driving under the influence of substances. And the driving rules in Nigeria does not permit that, but because they are addicted and they go into this and they carry their parents' vehicles sometimes, enter the highways, they go in for nightclubs, and sometimes on their way back, you see a lot of accidents occurring. Now, all these costs, they hit them. All these costs take toll on parents and on communities. So, considering all these addiction-related costs, the research now also try to look up for, in Nigeria, for instance, if there are any attempts that have been put in place to reduce the threat of substance abuse and addiction. And here in Nigeria, we have two major attempts that the government itself over the years tried to put in place. They may not be effective as expected, but to some extent, they are making concerted efforts to see how, if not bringing an end to this decay problem, but at least to reduce substance abuse and addiction in Nigeria. There are two major establishments in Nigeria that if you look at the next page, I have a picture of NDLEA staff. National Drug Law Enforcement Agency was established in 1984 by the then military ruler, who is currently the president of Nigeria, General Muhammadu Buhari. He established this National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to see if it could handle all issues concerning drugs and substances. They were to ensure control, they were to ensure putting up measures to bring down or lower the higher rates of trafficking, drug trafficking, illicit trading in drugs. So the NDLEA has been working hard, and from our interaction with them in carrying out this research, they also have challenges that sometimes make it difficult to achieve the much needed, the much desired success the Nigerian community would have loved to see. Sometimes you have figures at higher levels of governance that if their relations are caught with drugs and they are taken to court for trials, they intervene. So instead of being sentenced sometimes to serve some jail times, such victims or such culprits are set free through influence of higher authorities. And that was the major problem from them. They also lack a major support of infrastructure. They lack equipment that can easily detect drugs, moving objects, and those are some of the challenges they told us they face. Secondly, there is a National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, that was also established in 1990, still with the aim of controlling, reducing the threat of substance abuse and addiction in Nigeria. And NAFDAC also has been working very hard in various ways, that even beverages now that are produced, drinks, they must be registered with NAFDAC. They undergo tests to be sure that there are no narcotics or substances that are harmful to human life. So due to some of these challenges, alarming problems of substance abuse and addiction, I am a professional counselor. Even in the university where I work now, I work in the university's Counseling and Development Center. And one of the major problems we face handling on a daily basis is the challenge of substance abuse and addiction among students, young teenagers. So I am strongly convinced that if all hands are put on deck, if enough professional counselors are employed into action to help these young teenagers who abuse substance and are addicted to it through a proposed framework. In this research, I have put up a kind of a proposed framework, counseling framework that I feel, if it is effectively put in place in the Nigerian communities, it will go a long way to help. Why am I making this proposal? From my experience with teenagers at the Counseling and Development Center at my university, there are a lot of research work we are doing relating to all these substance abuse. One of it is the levels of awareness. If teenagers are they actually aware, of the dangers, of the effects, both short-term and long-term effects of substance abuse? We are still working also on research on that. And I just discovered that many of them don't seem to be aware of any serious side effects, be it on health grounds or on any ground. So why I am proposing this counseling framework, number one, is to see that counseling can contribute, can help a lot in bringing down or in reducing the threat. Number two, counseling will also help parents, will strengthen parents, and also guide them on ways to identify if their children. One of the things we discover in this research is that some parents are not even aware that their children are addicted. Some are not even aware. We try to examine the levels of awareness, and it's surprising to see that some parents are not even aware their children abuse substances. Even when they come home and they abuse these substances in hiding, some parents are not aware. So, but with counseling, the framework are presented here. One, we propose an addiction to substance and recovery action group to be taken through successful professional counseling. This can only be done by trained counselors. It can be by way of town hall meeting. It can be by way of group counseling with parents. It could be in school settings or at community setting levels. By the very nature of Nigerian community setting, this can easily be achieved. In every community, we have community leaders at various levels. So if we have government supporting trained counselors, we will form up a committee that will go through community leaders. Another major way to achieve this, religion is very strong in Nigeria. Two major religions, Islam and Christianity. So we can also walk through religious leaders, imams, pastors, and trained counselors would have opportunity to engage communities in counseling activities aimed at reducing substance abuse and helping teenagers to recover from such. Then also, if government can create various counseling activities in communities, if government can put up structures, counseling structures in communities that trained counselors can make use of, and people, awareness is created in communities that this is a helping center. Parents who are suffering a lot of effects from their children as a result of substance abuse can always come over here, share their experiences, and can also encourage their children to come up. So when these counseling activities are created across communities, it will go a long way to reduce, if not bringing an end to this menace, it would reduce this substance abuse and addiction among young people. Also, in these counseling activities being created, we are looking at government trying to form youth action groups where counselors meet with youths on a monthly basis or quarterly basis to create programs, themes that will talk to youths about the dangers of substance abuse. Also counseling, family counselings. That is what I mean by counseling for families actions. Family counseling can also be taken up by government at state, at federal, at local levels, that families are given the right information and how they could help to monitor their children who abuse drugs, how to identify it earlier, to know when it is getting bad, and how to refer to experts. Also, there is need for community mental health counseling activities. Some of the health challenges the addicts have are mental health challenges. Some have serious problems some have even developed psychiatric problems. Some are suffering a lot of health challenges. So when we have mental health counselors, trained counselors that can also engage those who have different mental health problems, it will go a long way. Then also activities, counseling activities involving governmental and corporate groups. What I mean here is that the counselors would take up meetings. They visit government, local government headquarters, commissioners, corporate organizations like NGOs, their management top leaders to see if they could render financial support. Now, all these framework activities are proposed here. They are capital intensive. They cost a lot of money to get them through. So if there is financial support to train counselors from government and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, it will go a long way to, that is the kind of panacea I think, and I'm convinced that counseling can contribute to reducing this addiction among young people. So specifically, there were 3 objectives that motivated this research. Number 1, the first objective, I wanted to know from the families directly, having direct interaction with the families of these substance abusers. If this substance abuse and addiction has any cost, any financial impact on their families and communities. I also wanted to have direct contact, interaction with the substance abusers and addicts themselves to know what are the reasons, based from their own explanations, trying to get what factors, what are the reasons behind the rise, these increasing numbers of young people abusing drugs every day. And I also wanted to determine if this substance abuse and addiction have any effects on the communities in which these young people live. So those 3 objectives, I raised 3 research questions and 2 hypotheses. They were all null hypotheses. I assume that juvenile substance abuse and addiction has no any appreciable financial cost on Nigerian households. And the second one is that it has no detrimental effects on Nigerian communities. And the design I used to carry out this research, I adopted the descriptive survey research method. And the parents of young substance abusers and addicts from 6 different states. Nigeria is a country that has 36 states. So I picked 6 different states, and you see why it took almost 2 years to get across. These are neighboring states surrounding the vicinity I lived in. I visited Nasarawa State, which is also close to the FCT. FCT Abuja itself, the environment where I live around. Nasarawa, Kaduna is also bordering with the FCT. Those are the 6 states that make up the population, and 600 respondents were selected randomly to make up this. And I constructed a 4-point Likert scale questionnaire, juvenile substance abuse, economic cost consequences on households and communities questionnaire, which I used to administer to parents and to the respondents. So the results of the findings showed that research question 1 revealed that the juvenile substance abuse and addiction had a very great economic cost consequences on households and communities. And this is seen from the way some families, their children have even dropped out entirely. Some families cannot afford to pay the school fees of their students again, of their children, I mean to say. Research question 2 also indicated that many parents agreed that, many young people, they agreed that there are a lot of reasons. Some of them from my interaction, some due to family separation, there is divorce at home, and they got frustrated because of that. Some even told me they were in school and they got news, the mom divorced the dad or the dad divorced the mom. And so in trying to find consolation, their friends convinced them that this can help to calm your nerves. And so from one stick of marijuana, they grew to 2 to 3 to 4. And so some of them, death of parents, some lose mothers, some lose 2 parents at a time due to this increased insecurity challenges where communities rumpled and attacked. So, and young people lose a lot of their relations, and it affects their thinking ability. They begin to think of where to find solace. And most cases, most young people, the easiest way they think they can find solace is substance abuse. So a good number of them were able to identify those items. And substance number 3 also revealed that there is serious detrimental effect on Nigerian communities. The biggest worrisome one is this kidnapping gangs, that most of these young people who abuse substances, they form gangs and they become kidnappers. And most communities in the night, people cannot rest. Now it has reached a level that directly they move. Before, kidnappings were done on the highways. Transporters could be stopped and people are picked. But now it has grown worse, that even households in the community at night, you hear a knock on your door, the next thing, people are picked and ransom are being asked for. Those are the grave effects, very negative, detrimental effect that communities have to cope with and face. In conclusion, based on the findings, I conclude that addiction, substance abuse and addictions has a lot of severe economic costs on households and a lot of detrimental effects on communities. There is an urgent need for the government, who has the power, the authority, who has the military and the police, to address this problem in the communities, to also see the need to put in place this counseling framework that I have proposed to address this problem among the teeming youth population so as to safeguard the future of our country. I made, among other recommendations, 3 major recommendations here. That is the first one, the government is to redouble their efforts to create more employment opportunities. As some of the youth complain, there are no jobs doing. We have these problems of beggars, almajiris in northern Nigeria here. If they have jobs to do, it will reduce the cost of some of those. Then also there should be active participation of communities. That the government should follow and action groups are put in place to fight substance abuse among young people. And then lastly, institutions like the Drug and Law Enforcement Agency, NAFDAC, National Agency for Food and Drug Administration Control, be given adequate support, not just by government, but even non-governmental organizations, so that they have access to state-of-the-art equipment that they could use in detecting drugs trafficking along the highways, in the communities, and all that. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, you can speak. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Father, for the presentation. Really, really appreciate. I must state at this point that Father remains an elder brother as well as a boss to me and a father to me as well. I grew up under his ambience, under his care. He was my boss, and today, gratefully, I'm privileged to discuss his paper with him. I want to begin by giving actually a brief. Mine is a co-discussion. I want to approach it from a discussional point from my own area of research, precisely economic history and institutional economics. I want to begin by looking at the very foundation of this challenge, drug abuse. It is not a new thing. It's actually a practice that predates us and will certainly outdate us. The drug business is a huge one. It's a big business. It's a global challenge. It is not unique to Africa. Neither is it unique to Nigeria. Brief study revealed that recently, as of today, 1 in 10 of every American has experienced one form of abuse, or one form of a drug experience or the other. 1 in 10 of every American in the United States, to be precise. Here in in Europe, 1 in 3 of every adults, 1 in 3 of each adult in the EU has experienced one form of drug consumption or abuse or the other. Not consumption, but abuse. In West Africa, in Australia, it's 1 in 20 of Australians have drug addiction problems already existing. Globally, they said that we have 3.4 to 4.8% of 3 to 4.8% of people consuming cannabis, not all drugs, but just cannabis. That's according to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. And it is said that about 64% of the global population have drug abuse issue. And that is more than half of the world population. You see that if, at the end of the day, it is actually a huge challenge. It is a problem that is a global one. And the United Nations actually is working towards helping countries as well as regions combat this issue. In the United States, 20 million people every year, 20 million people every year are reported to have drug abuse issues. And it's over 600, it's a business that is worth it's worth over $600 billion annually in the United States alone. Here in Europe, due to one might be tempted to ask, why is this problem continuous? Why is it that it is not ending? Generation after generation, age after age, time after time, decade after decade, people run into the same habits of drug consumption. There is this neuroscientific study or a neuroscientific theory that asserts that most attractive factor to drug consumption is the feel-good aspect of drug consumption. Most people believe that when they consume it, it makes them feel good, it makes them sleep well, it makes them feel like the whole problems are out. And it is that desire to feel good that is actually not it's not so completely unscientific. There is this part of our brain that is called the dopamine. In the dopamine, there is this, it's a part of the brain that deals with the feel good attitude, because you know how the human brain is a complex one, it's have different parts, and the dopamine actually is that part of the brain that deals with the desire to feel good. And that is that aspect of the brain that is usually tempting or prompting an individual to doing something that will make him or her feel good. It is out of that desire that the quest to consume some of this substance is born. And when this quest is satisfied the first time, the desire to keep satisfying it exists. And because of the quest to keep satisfying that desire, the abuse becomes an addiction. The person does not just consume it the first time or one off and then forgets it. No, he goes back again and again and again. And one consequence of drug consumption is that after consuming it, the both cells in the brain that at the point of recovery after the a person consuming it is recovering, the point of the both cells that should reconnect actually get disordered. That's why you see sometimes after consuming drugs, the individual finds it difficult to leave that state of ecstasy even after waking up and the eyes are cleared, or maybe the memory takes some time to recover because of the delay in reconnection of the both cells. Now, one positive aspect of drug consumption that has made people over time, we hear celebrities always falling into this problem of drug addiction because they believe it gives them mental alertness. There is this state of mental alertness drug consumers usually have after consuming, just temporal alertment, not a steady alertment. It's actually a temporal one, and because of that, they feel like going into it every now and then. And there is also the sense of extreme joy that they usually complain. Already, they usually state that they feel extreme happiness and boundless energy with some with consuming paranoids. And this is why, this is the reason, this is the basic foundation, the basic bedrock why drug consumption keeps reoccurring. One challenge is this: during the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic, a lot of people, while on lockdown, decided to try things, decided to go with this dopamine, the aspect of the brain that makes you want to feel good. And because of the stress of the lockdown and everything, a lot of people went into this drug consumption. And because of the huge population of people who went into this aspect, this habit of drug consumption, it is speculated that in West Africa alone, we have 5.2 to 13.5 people of population, West and Central Africa. The United Nations, the World Health Organization, asserts that we have 5.2 to 13.5 rise in drug consumption in West Africa alone. Now, if we come here in the West, it's also the same thing. In South Africa, we had about 15% of adults who are into this drug addiction, and it's actually increased during the pandemic. But one question remains: after the pandemic, what happened? Did they stop? Of course, no. A lot of people still continued with the habit, and that is why there has been a rise in the drug markets. It's actually, like I did mention before, it's actually a big business. Where I always tell people when I was during my research, because I dealt with this aspect of research when I was dealing with negative entrepreneurship, and we looked at crimes, organized crimes, using the prototype of Stephen Ellis. There is no business that can thrive, or there is no business that can stand if there is no demand, because there will always be supply. Either the supply might come from the business people, or individuals who want to make gain out of the demand. They will cash into the supply, and then business exists. And because there is a demand for these drugs, because there is a demand for this consumption for these substances, there will certainly be the supply. And because the supply exists, the business continues. And it is a circle that keeps going on. And you'll be surprised that some of those who, let me go back to a historical analysis of Nigeria drug markets. Buhari set up in 1984, set up the NDLA, and with the help of his Operation 1984, the Operation, sorry,
drug free, zero drug.
Zero drug, and there was this policy he also did. It was war against discipline. Why? Yeah,
discipline.
War against discipline. Yeah, war against
indiscipline.
Yeah, because of these two policies, they were able to push down the drug market in Nigeria. But after his overthrow in 1984, we see to 1985. In 1985, we saw a huge rise in drug activities in Nigeria. Why? Because the head of state at that time, General Ibrahim Babangida, had some of his loyalists who delved into this business and saw that there was huge capital, huge money in it, huge profits from it, and they used their uniform advantage to create the markets, to create an easy passage for the markets. That's why you see between 1985 and 1995, there was a huge increase in the drug business in Nigeria, because even after Babangida left in 1993, Abacha was not left out. Abacha himself was also an opioid consumer, as well as some of his boys. And because those people in government within this 10 years interval had serious interest in the business, they paved way so Nigeria moved from a drug controlling country to a drug free zone. Senegal, we all know if we do a little map, let me do a little map analysis of the map of how drug moves in Africa. Once it leaves South America, usually it arrives either in Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, or the port of Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, or Guinea, Equatorial Guinea. Now, when it arrives any of these three ports, usually it moves hinterland into the rest part of West Africa and Central Africa. And this is how a drug has been going over the years. It passes through Guinea-Bissau, it passes through Guinea, it passes through Burkina Faso, even through the ancient trade routes. Recently, when I was doing, because I also did a study on the ancient trade routes, and through the reason why this Boko Haram or terrorism activity has been on increase in Nigeria and other parts of the ancient Trans-Sahara trade routes is because beyond the ideology of Islam, there is also the business of drug and weapons. Now, when drug and weapon businesses actually intermingle with the ideology, you see that these young people who go into this battle do not go into this battle purely on the sense of the mental state of religious vanguard, but they are actually induced with alcohol, and they are actually equipped with weapons, illegal weapons. And at the end of the day, you see that beyond the internal effects of drug abuse and consumption in Nigeria itself, vis-a-vis communities, as further rightly explained, you see also the internationalization of crime in Nigeria as a result of drug abuse. And the internationalization of crime, not just in Nigeria, but in West and Central African states, as well as in Northern African states. You see that there is this trend that beyond the community trade in drug or community transactions in drug, there is also the international transactions in drug that travels between borders, from this border to the other border, that border to the other border, and it travels on. And this was accentuated with the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. Most of the young men who came from the UK and from other parts of Europe to help in the new uprising during the Arab Spring also came with drugs. This actually helped in the struggle. They were always consuming these drugs on the streets because they were fighting the state. And when they succeeded in pulling down parts of the state in the other parts of Libya, most of the weapons and drugs that were now being shipped into Libya did not get to Tripoli because Tripoli was controlled by UN-led forces. So it traveled through Benghazi and other area into from Libya to Burkina Faso, through to Niger, Chad, and then Nigeria, and then Northern Cameroon, and then this cycle keeps going on. You see that these crimes actually increase with the aid of drugs and substances. It's actually a regional problem in Africa. We have this problem of porous borders. And because of our porous borders, these illegal substances travel beyond travel into Nigeria and out of Nigeria easily. And then it actually creates an institutional problem. At the end of the day, we see that institutions like the Nigerian police force actually have the challenge of enforcing drug war. The NDLEA itself, thanks to the recent appointment of Colonel Buba Marwa retired, or General Buba Marwa retired, the NDLEA has been having this challenge of inability to enforce its mandate because of poor motivation. With the appointment of an individual like General Marwa, it has actually given them the courage to increase in the activities. And one funny thing is this: most of those who engage in these businesses in Nigeria are not consumers. Most of those who import methamphetamine and other what am I saying? Methamphetamine and cannabis and others, they don't consume it. These are just businessmen. They just bring it in, and they feed on the trade. They capitalize on the trade. The recent arrest by NDLEA shows that most of those who control this trade have boys who operate the trade for them. And that also confirms what I did in my own during my thesis in 2019. And I was able to realize that most of these people who do this trade don't really consume it. They are just businessmen. those who really consume it might be some of the middlemen and then some of the guys at the bottom. It is actually actually a pyramid. There is a pyramid in the trade of drugs. I know, Father, your study does not cover the trade aspect. I'm only speaking for my own aspects itself. But basically, you see that because of the increase in the trade, there is increase in consumption. And in recent times, in Nigeria, for example, it is no longer the consumption of marijuana, cannabis, and others. There has been a consumption in methamphetamine, the one called a crystal clear, the crystal clear one. It has actually eaten deep into our youths. When we were growing up back then in the early in the 90s, it used to be codeine and tramadol is a recent one. Codeine and there is this one they do sniper. They use in patching tires or so. That was what was in vogue then.
Rubber solution.
Yeah, rubber solution, yes, sir. Rubber solution. That was the common one then. But you see, of late, there has been a metamorphosis in the choice of drugs as well as in what they consume. And if you would take it or not, even the society and institutions themselves are bending to the system. Here in Portugal, for example, in 2018, in summer of 2018, we know that the parliament here before us approved the consumption, the lesser gas sale of cannabis and others. That's why you see a lot of shops are rising every day, selling weeds and everything. But Lisbon wants to be like Amsterdam, where it's commonly sold in cafes, and more shops are created for this, and more people are consuming them. And it may exist as just as weed sales today in Europe, but take it or leave it. Someday you see even cocaine will be sold, and it's actually it's a challenge. Yeah. Marijuana is not so. Yeah, they said medical marijuana. Yeah, medical marijuana. Yeah.
Medical.
2006, 2004.
Yeah.
From a professor from this
university. Yeah.
And the consumption has actually gone down, not from marijuana because it's a light drug, but from heroin. We have
heroin, yeah.
Cocaine. All consumption of hard drugs has gone down.
Yeah.
Because of decriminalization.
Decriminalization, yeah. That's what I'm saying. The attempt to decriminalize this makes institutional acceptance of it, because in an attempt to decriminalize it, the institutions are already bending, and because of these bends, there is more consumption, and the effects at the end of the day, like his study is showing, is the society and the family, the communities that suffer it. In Nigeria, it's actually a different thing. Here, somebody might smoke it and then gets high and then goes to sleep, but in developing societies, it's a different case scenario, where these young people form gangs and then go into crimes, and they disturb the communities. Basically, I would want to submit with a brief discussion on the impact of this study. Father has given us some recommendations, which are actually beautiful and good. There is this advocacy aspect, though it's not actually related to what we should be doing, but there is also this advocacy aspect I was engaged in when I was in Nigeria, in Kano. A colleague of mine in MTN then was doing drug abuse, substance abuse advocacy, and I was helping him with some things, and we went to some secondary schools and some high schools then to do some advocacy, and you get to realize that some of these young people, like Father rightly mentioned, some of them actually get into this not because they want to, but because of peer influence. And because of this peer influence, most parents do not know that their children are consuming these things, and at the end of the day, they don't even know that there are effects on them. And there was this before I rest my case, there was this incident that happened in my secondary school days, my elder sister school, Mariam Bangila Girls Science College in Mina, where young girls were taking substances, abusing something. They were not taking. They were abusing drugs just to read and understand easily. They said that when they take some of these substances, it helps them to assimilate fast. And because of that, a lot of high school kids were consuming it. And it's actually affected one of my father's best friend, his daughter. Today, she's mentally insane. From back then in 2000 till today. she's not mentally balanced, because they were part of those who were consuming so much so that they could perform excellent. They were top of their classes, science college, everybody's competing to be better than the other, and they were taking it in beyond regulation. They were consuming some of these things to be better students, and at the end of the day, it affected their mental health. We would at this point allow other contributions. Yeah.
All right.
You can come here so that we would, yeah, please. Okay, fine. Okay. We have our doctor in the making, is a PhD candidate who would want to react.
Okay, thank you very much, Father, for that presentation, and also thank you for the background. I think giving us this economic background also helps, the Father's presentation, because some of the issues I also wanted to hit on, you have actually mentioned a lot of them. One of the things I actually wanted to talk about was, for me initially, it's like we are treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
We are treating the symptom of the problem. We are not treating the problem. Yes, I understand the various recommendations which you have made, but my first thought, when you started presenting was, what is the system like? Where the youths are? Do they have support systems? Do they have welfare systems? Things that support them. Because if these things are not in place, no matter the advocacy we do, no matter the research we do, somehow we'll find ourselves going back again. I remember when I was also in the university in Nigeria, I attended Delta State University. I was president of the Rotary Club. We also had drug societies, say no to drugs and all that. We were part of all this process. But today, I don't think these things, they don't talk about these things anymore. Because it's like you said, the institutions are bending, it's becoming normal, in society. So yes, why I accept that advocacy needs to be done, the framework which you have presented needs to, but it's a microcosm in the macrocosm. It's an issue within a bigger issue. So if you address that little issue, it will not have that effect, if not look at it from the larger, the larger picture. That's one thing I wanted to say. So I also wanted to ask Fene, when you interacted with the addicts, if I would use the word, their coping strategies. I know you talked about some people feeling, okay, I've gone through pains, I've gone through difficult times, so this is the way I cope. How did you address that? Of course, I know it's a research, you might not be intervening, but based on what you have said, you're also a trained counselor, and you probably also provide counseling to some of these people. So how was your engagement when people tell you, oh, it's the way I can cope? These were the strategies I use for survival. Because we have had situations where even people who drink alcohol, for instance, beer, they tell you, man, I'm so tired, things are bad, I just want to consume alcohol and feel good. Just like what you were saying, it gives you that satisfaction, that immediate satisfaction, which wears out. And when it wears out, you realize that the problem never went anywhere. So what was your engagement with them, when they tell you, these are coping strategies for us, these are ways for us to survive. That's one. Also, I know you looked at the financial cost, to the families, and then also looking at the society in general. The young people, like I said, what further support, even within the families, were they provided with? Because we have a situation where people, okay, why are you doing that? We grew up in a society sometimes where, you do something wrong, nobody really counsels you. They actually scream at you. Yeah. Did you take time to also understand, their family backgrounds? Yes, some of them may have lost people and all that, but sometimes it goes more beyond just knowing what the issue is. Understanding how they have been helped, what support they have been provided with, to address some of these issues. And then maybe finally, so that I don't take up all the time, because I wrote a couple of things. For me, I think the institutions that were set up by the government basically is what would I call, how would I call that now? Institutions to punish. They were set up to punish people. I don't know if NDLA or NAFDAC has some counseling and rehabilitation form of activities. You're traveling on the road, you see NDLA people, oh, stop there, they check for drugs. If they get drugs, wow, you are in problems. Why don't you feel as a person, if they catch me, the first thing they'll tell me is, why are you doing this? But no. So do they have that? Or these institutions were basically established to just go punish people? So that's basically what they see. So if I know, okay, I will only be punished, then I try as much as possible to hide and do what I do. So these are some of the things you also need to look at, if we need to make headway when it comes to, drug abuse and addict. So let me just stop there briefly and then, thank you.
Thank you much. Father, I don't know if you will be
I can respond to, if you look at like the issue of support system he is talking of, if you look at the framework I tried to put up, number one, there is no any clearly defined support system. But if you look at the governmental and corporate activity I put in the counseling framework, that is what that point is targeting at. That to some extent, we could begin negotiations. Like we've already observed in Nigeria, there is no any support system for any addict. Truly speaking, the NDLE you are saying, like you rightly said, I'm not sure if there are trained counselors employed to even work, which there should be. I'm not sure if they have established the rehabilitation centers we have, so to say, the government owned, they are not functioning. So when I said a governmental and NGO interaction, the idea is that through counseling activities, we see if the government could be put or be made to put up support system that will be efficient. There is no efficient support system. Even the NDLE, like you said, there are so many challenges that they are facing. Even with the Colonel Buba Marwa, Vincent said, there are a lot of challenges. And most of them are not employed based on professionalism. The employment in NDLE is based on whom you know. So these are challenges that until we begin to take serious discussions with the government, and I feel that if you are professional counselors discussing with government, we'll be able to give government guide, direction on how these support systems could be put in place. You imagine across major suburban towns, like you talk of Kefi in Nasarawa, you talk of Nyanya in Nasarawa, Suleja, these are big communities around Abuja, and there is no single government counseling center for drug addicts or substance abusers. So these are the things we are thinking that it is time that government be informed, be enlightened, be guided, frameworks be proposed and be given from local to state levels. And sometimes we may be lucky to meet a positive response. If we're able to get government putting in place a very efficient support system. I was at one of the recovery center. It's a privately owned hope and addiction recovery center in Kaduna. And it's far better than the government owned. The government also has one, but this one is an individual who suffered addiction before, was taken to the US, he recovered, and with the help of some NGOs in the US, he was able to put up a recovery center. And you have hundreds of youths who are addicted, who abuse substances, that every day on a daily basis is interacting, and a good number of them are recovering. You know, in your question of whether I had interactions, what was I able to do? You know, when you from a professional point of view, you can help somebody by the streets way anyway, but what we do is such young people, such victims that we encounter and we're lucky to interact with, we encourage them, we refer them. There is a service called referral. When I was in Kaduna, I refer many of them to the Hope and Addiction Recovery Center. And there is also another center, the government owned, somewhere in Kaduna North. So all you need is you give them the numbers of directors, and we also give their phone numbers. Those who were able to some will fill the form. They don't want for reasons of one of the symptoms of addiction is they try to hide their identities. So if you want to get information, you give somebody a form to fill, and you say, why won't you put your phone number? He said, no, it's private. And you know, in counseling, you don't force somebody against. So, but those who put their numbers, we give them to the directors of those centers, you know, to keep contact, to invite them. And counseling, somebody must freely come. It's not by force. You try to convince the person to let him know you need help. But if the person does not want your help, you will not force the person. Otherwise, those we interacted with, we try to show them the right approach. And if they go up to the centers, they will get good help. And that is how we do it. At the university center, we have quite a large number of students that are undergoing proper counseling process. Yes, you have appointments on a weekly basis, they will come. And one of the things I mentioned is that for reasons of ignorance, most young people don't know the devastating effects of drugs on the brain cells. Yes, and you know the drugs, they damage the brain cells based on age ranges. The younger you are, the faster your brain cells gets damaged when you take these dangerous substances. So when they come and you are able to help them, they see the risks and dangers involved. Sometimes they begin to recover. They understand that this is dangerous. And they see if they really want to live long and happy, they have to drop these bad habits. These are bad habits. Now, one of the major reasons you see drugs, substance abuse and addiction among young people thriving, like Vincent was saying, most of the people involved in it, they don't consume it, but it is for financial gains. You know, the people selling it, they make a lot of money. In my analysis on the main paper, you know, before it used to cost a pack of marijuana from the research findings we made. Before the pandemic, we discovered that a pack costs 1,700 naira. And those who are chain addicts, they can finish a pack in a day. Some even will finish 2 packs in a day. So, but now, a pack is costing almost 4 times that amount. So what it means is, if you were used to collecting extra 1,700 from your parents, you times that times 4 and see what you collect from your parents in a day as a young person. So it's very, very expensive. So people who are selling this, who are trafficking this, a good number of them are not consumers, but they make a lot of money. It is the economic gain that is one of the major reasons you see drugs trafficking thriving is the economic gain. Those who are at a higher level of governance in Nigeria, they make billions of naira from it. And you will never see them at the centers where these drugs and substances are dispersed. They have their boys and agents working all through. So in my university, on a good day, some months ago, a woman came in, and at the gate, the security interrogated her, and she came under the pretext she was coming to see her son. So, but because the university is now entirely covered with CCTV cameras. So this woman, she never knew that at the security post, she now came and she was actually bringing drugs to one of the students. So, and when she brought out the bag that she was carrying the drugs and handed over to the student, the chief surveillance officer in the office he made a call to ISEG and told them to collect that bag from the boy to check what was inside, and it was cannabis. No, it was. So, and the woman was taken up to the police and all that. But the point I'm making is that people make a lot of money. Now, that small container the woman brought in that day, we were told that it costs 150,000 naira. And for a student to have 450,000 naira in Nigeria, you know that, and a student, one or two could finish that in a day or two. So it's real money making. It's a business that is thriving more than even any goods you think you can sell in Nigeria. Now, one of the reasons among students is this ecstasy. This ecstasy, feeling of ecstasy among young people. And sometimes in the hostel, one of the boys I interacted with, he told me that if they go to play football, after football, a good number of his peers will, be in that ecstasy moment, so excited. And one day he asked his friend, what actually happened? What makes you to be so? And the guy told him, you come to my house. And he visited him and he showed him what he used to take to be up high like that. So we are trying on the area of support system. There is no any identified. There are few NGOs. And the problem with Nigerians, people register NGOs with particular goals and objectives, but behind they do different things. So what we are working towards is to see how adequately if we get NGOs that we could work with and then begin to liaise with government bodies. And we are the ones to make the proposals of adequate support system for victims. Even the families, the households, they need proper support system through counseling. Like we were saying, if parents are taught or are well informed about symptoms of addiction or substance abuse, they can also easily identify. They can easily know when a child is abusing substance or not. But it's surprising to see parents who, one of the men in Nasarawa said to me that each time he saw, because the son, he puts the tramadol, sometimes he puts it in a teacup. You think his tea is taken. So, and the dad told me, he never thought that the boy, not until when he discovered that this boy was becoming a problem. But each time he is carrying his cup around, this kind of stainless cup that you can put tea. So the parents think he's taking tea, but he is taking a substance. There is a recent one that came up now in Nigeria. You see it's like soft drink, but it's highly concentrated with substances. So children move around with bottles of soft drinks at home. You think they're soft drinks, they're not. So if awareness is created, that is what I mean by those family counseling activities. The parents are giving tips on what to check out in their children. I believe that counseling can go a long way to help in helping this substance abuse. Information is power. When people are duly informed, it helps a lot in reducing a lot of anomalies in the communities than not having any information at all. So we just want to see how, from the aspect of counseling, what counseling can do to help. And then from the aspect of governance, what counseling can do to motivate, to encourage government to establish strong support systems in community. You imagine a whole settlement like Suleja, no single government counseling center for mental health, for substance abusers, no. Even the correctional centers we have, nothing to write home about. No counseling session goes on in any correctional centers to say, identifying people with the problems, what actually happened, why are you here? It is when you identify people's problems that you know what approach to take to help them. So, and these things are not existing in our correctional centers. So like we said, NDLE was established for punishment reasons. If you remember, the law Buhari put during the war against indiscipline, drug addicts were to be killed. And we lost a good number of lives before Babangida came in and put an end to the execution aspect of that edict. he put an end to it and said, no, rather, let us adopt another agency that will help. Otherwise, quite a good number of lives were lost when that policy was put in place at its early stage by the then president. So, and counseling is not for punishment. Counseling aims at helping the individual to recover, to develop potentials that will help him to find better meaning in life. So that is what exactly counseling is all about. It's all about information, that we're able to give parents the right information they need. Parents will not become like para-counselors, people who are interested in helping people, though they're not trained counselors. But when they have the tips, the basic skills, they can also help their children to find better meaning instead of abusing substances. So that is the approach we are trying to put in place in that counseling framework. And I believe in this Chinese saying that the journey of 1,000,000 miles normally begin with one. So we are beginning, we are forming groups. We want to start it from local to state or even federal level to see how this framework could be put in place. As an old government is phasing out early next year, we're looking forward to a new government that will come in and we begin to negotiate, begin to work to see how good support systems will be put in place to help in reducing this substance abuse. It's a big, big problem for those of us who are back home here. We see and we know how it is. The same thing at the community level, that people are not safe again, a lot of criminal activities, gangsterism, forming gangs to carry people, pick people. And when they pick you, sometimes it's as small as 100,000. From 10 million, they will come down to 100,000, they'll collect and release you. And next tomorrow again, they pick another victim. And they share these monies to keep their addiction going. All they need is what? To get these drugs. And so it's really a sad situation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's see, we have hands raised. Let's hear from those. If there are one or two reactions, we will take also before time goes. Nehemiah Okji, I don't know if Mr. Nehemiah, if he's available.
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, you have the floor. Let's hear you.
Okay, evening all. I want to thank Father for a very wonderful presentation. I want to add in based on the economic aspect. Economically, the consequences of drug abuse is manifesting itself in terms of prevention and the treatment costs. We also have the healthcare, hospital costs. We talk of mobility and mortality. And what I'm trying to say is that part of the recommendation, the society should dedicate more resources to the evidence-based prevention that Father has mentioned some of them. And this can also come in through education and intervention, which will also include possibly the cost of treatment and rehabilitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nehemiah. Father, you can go on.
Okay. So we thank Mr. Nehemiah for that contribution. And I think on that economic aspect, the cost of treating, the way we are thinking the government could come in is to see, if the government establish some of these treatment centers, then the government could contribute by subsidizing the cost of treatment. So otherwise, the cost on households is very, very disturbing. But if we have The first step is to get the government established treatment centers, recovery centers. So when we have government centers that addicts will go and get treatment, then the cost of treatment could be subsidized by government, just the way that the federal government, for instance, subsidizes for supply of HIV drugs to all government-owned hospitals. For those who avail themselves to government hospitals, the drugs, the medications for HIV are subsidized compared to private hospitals and all that. So I think that would be the proposal. We are going to put up that based on the so that government should be able to subsidize, and it will go a long way to help families cope with this problem.
Thank you very much, Father. We have also another hand raised, Dr. Adeola Ngozi. Can we have you, ma'am?
Oh, yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, madam.
Okay. Actually, I want to really appreciate Reverend Father Dr. Bahago for that beautiful presentation. I also want to add to the recommendation he has talked about, because if we're looking at it from the higher level, we should not forget that we have the early childhood and the elementary. There's nowhere such abuse will not start from. I believe the awareness should be inculcated in our curriculum, educational curriculum, and then we'll go to the grassroots to make sure that every nook and cranny, every human being is aware of the danger and what abuses are all about. Father has really dealt with that topic so much that that was a good one. So I enjoy him to include that there should be a built-up in the national curriculum for learning from every level, for every individual to be aware and know what drug abuse and what the substances are and the effects in their lives. Thank you, Father. That was a good one.
Thank you very much. It's noted. I think.
Thank you very much, madam. We appreciate that. That was a beautiful contribution, actually. Father, if you would actually, it's actually a suggestion if that would be considered as part of your recommendation. We don't know if there's any other contribution from others. We are already time bound.
Okay.
Father, thank you so very much for the presentation. We at CEsA Thinks, the Center for Africa and Development Studies of the Lisbon School of Economics and Management, University of Lisbon, really appreciate your efforts, your scholarly contribution, and your resources which you have put together to make this presentation a success. Like we all know, it's a monthly presentation on our research seminar series. By next month, we'll be having another, and then that's next month is next year already. And then by next semester, by February, we'll have another, and then we'll move into the second semester presentations. We really appreciate everyone who was taking his or her time to come out here. On behalf of CEsA and the entire staff here, Philip and everybody, thank you very much for your contribution, and thank you very much for making today's presentation a success. See you all next month and next year. Happy end of the year.
Thank you very much. Happy Christmas to you guys.
Same to you, Father. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Nehemiah. Thank you, Dr. Adeola. Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sister Mary Avila. Thank you, Professor Auta. Thank you, everybody. Do have a beautiful evening.
You too. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.